Abraham Maslow is considered the founder and spiritual leader of the humanistic psychology movement. He objected to behaviorism, which we will be covering later, and he objected to psychoanalysis, particularly Freud's approach to personality. According to Maslow, when psychologists study only abnormal or emotionally disturbed examples of humanity, they ignore all the positive human qualities, such as happiness, contentment, and peace of mind. We underestimate human nature, according to Maslow, when we fail to examine the best in people, that is, the most creative, healthy, and mature individuals. Therefore, Maslow decided that his approach to personality would assess society's outstanding representatives. When you want to determine how fast people can run, you study not the average runner, but the fastest runner you can find. Only in this way is it possible to determine the full range of human potential. His theory does not derive from case histories of clinical patients, but from research on creative, independent, self-sufficient, fulfilled adults. He concluded that each person is born with the same set of instinctive needs that enable us to grow, develop, and fulfill our potential. Here's a brief outline of the chapter and this lecture. We'll begin with an overview of holistic dynamic theory and continue with a biography of Abraham Maslow. We'll look at Maslow's view of motivation and then the top of the hierarchy of needs, self-actualization. We'll discuss Maslow's psychology and the philosophy of science that he had, and we'll see that there are several ways of actually measuring the level of self-actualization in individuals. There are many reasons that people do not reach the top of the needs hierarchy, and one of the reasons for the failure to self-actualize is what Maslow called the Jonah complex. The Jonah complex refers to our doubts about our own abilities, and we'll explore that in this lecture. We'll continue with psychotherapy using this theoretical approach, and then look at related research which supports Maslow's propositions. And we'll conclude with a critique of Maslow and a look at his concept of humanity. Maslow's theory focuses on the positive qualities in people as opposed to treating them as a bag of symptoms. He created a needs hierarchy of psychological health. He called his work positive psychology, and his work has been revived through the positive psychology movement, which looks at how people can build happiness rather than focusing on what is wrong in people. Maslow's holistic dynamic theory assumes that people are continually motivated by one need or another, and that under the proper circumstances they can reach a level of self-actualization. Lower needs must be satisfied first. These are hunger, safety, love, and esteem. We are moving into what are called humanistic theories, and what has been called the third force in psychology. The first was psychoanalysis. The second force was behaviorism. Maslow believed people have the potential to grow towards psychological health. Humanism has a more positive view of human nature. Here's a brief biography of Maslow. He was born in New York City in 1908, the eldest of 7 children of Russian and Jewish immigrants. He harbored a lifelong animosity toward his mother. His mother, Rose, kept a bolted lock on the refrigerator door. She only removed the lock when she was in the mood. On another occasion, Maslow found 2 abandoned kittens on the street. He decided to take them home and care for them. One evening, his mother discovered him giving the hungry kittens some milk in the family's basement. She became enraged and smashed the kittens' heads against the basement wall, right in front of him. He saw his mother as entirely insensitive and unloving. He never wanted anything to do with his mother and didn't even attend her funeral. To continue, he received a PhD from the University of Wisconsin, where he worked with Harry Harlow conducting animal studies. Like many people in the early 1930s, Maslow became enraptured, believing that behaviorism could solve all the world's problems. His training in experimental psychology included work on dominance and sexual behavior in primates. It was a giant step from this type of research in behaviorism to developing the ideas of humanistic psychology, from monkeys to self-actualization. He left Wisconsin and moved back to New York in 1935, working with E.L. Thorndike at Columbia University. That's where Thorndike gave him an intelligence test and found his IQ was 195. Maslow published several articles on human sexuality while he was at Columbia. But what is interesting is that earlier in his academic career, Abraham Maslow was struggling in school. He was placed on academic probation. This was strange because he was certainly capable of doing well, but had trouble in some courses because he just wasn't interested in the subjects. And it seems he was not performing to his potential. He was president of the American Psychological Association from 1967 to 1968, and he died in 1970 from a heart attack. He was 62. Historian Jessica Grogan, in a video in this week's module, talks about Maslow's influence. I think it's very good, and I encourage you to check it out. Maslow had a profound influence on personality psychology. His theory provides an explanation of how individuals can reach their full potential. He is one of the main figures of humanistic psychology, and his theory focuses on the motivations behind human behavior. Maslow challenged us to be more than we are. His view of motivation is based on 5 assumptions. First, he had a holistic approach. The whole person, not just one single part like the ego, id, or superego, is motivated at any one time. Secondly, motivation is complex. That is, there can be several motives to explain behavior. For example, the desire to have an intimate relationship with someone can be driven by several motives. Sexual needs, needs for companionship, love, and self-esteem. Third, people are continually motivated by one need or another. When one need is satisfied, it loses its power and is replaced by another need. Fourth, all people are motivated by the same basic needs. There is a universality of needs. But he did say the way needs are met vary across cultures. Finally, he said needs can be arranged on a hierarchy. This hierarchy assumes lower level needs must be met before higher level needs become motivators. The needs in this hierarchy are called conative, meaning they have motivational power. They start at the lowest level, physiological. These needs are oxygen, food, and water. Then safety needs, physical security, stability, freedom from danger, must be met, and they result in anxiety if they are not satisfied. Love and belongingness needs are next, including friendship, wanting a mate and children, and the need to belong. Esteem needs are next, self-confidence and having a positive reputation. Finally, at the top, self-actualization, which is reached only by the psychologically healthiest people. This is self-fulfillment, or reaching your full potential. Unlike other needs that are automatically activated when lower needs are met, self-actualization is not automatically activated when lower level needs are met. Only by embracing being values, such as truth, beauty, justice, etc., can people achieve self-actualization. Now, Maslow identified other categories of needs: aesthetic needs, cognitive needs, and neurotic needs. And these needs overlap the original 5-need hierarchy. Unlike conative needs, aesthetic needs are not universal, but some people are motivated by these needs. This is a desire for beauty and order. This is a love of art and orderly surroundings. When these needs aren't met, people become sick. Meeting aesthetic needs does not automatically mean you reach self-actualization. Cognitive needs are the desire to know, understand, and be curious. People who do not meet these needs become sick, depressed, and even paranoid. The needs to know and understand appear in late infancy and early childhood and are expressed by children as natural curiosity. Because the needs are innate, they do not have to be taught, but the actions of parents and teachers can serve to inhibit a child's spontaneous curiosity. Failing to satisfy cognitive needs is harmful and hampers the full development and functioning of the personality. Knowing and understanding, essentially finding meaning in our environment, are basic to interacting with that environment in an emotionally healthy, mature way to satisfy physiological safety, belongingness and love, esteem, and self-actualization needs. It is impossible to become self-actualizing if we fail to meet the needs to know and to understand. And finally, neurotic needs include a desire to dominate or inflict pain. These are the unproductive ways of relating to people. These needs lead to pathology, whether or not they are satisfied. Maslow believed most people satisfy lower level needs to a greater extent than higher level ones, but sometimes they are reversed. Sometimes a starving artist, for example, may ignore basic needs such as food in order to create a work of art or write the great novel. People may ignore health needs in order to work. But he also said if we understand the underlying motivation behind the behavior, this reversal is not real. That is, the behavior is really a means to satisfy the lower level needs, like a mother giving up her supper to her starving children. Maslow also believed some behaviors are unmotivated but are expressive behaviors. Expressive behaviors have no aim or goal but are just the way a person is. These are things like slouching, the way someone walks, their way of talking. In other words, some behaviors have nothing to do with personality and just are. Maslow suggested that instinctoid needs, which are partly hereditary, are those that are innate. We are born with them, but they can be modified by learning. He said sex is a basic physiological need, but the way it is expressed and fulfilled depends on learning. Instinctoid needs are difficult to change, but they can be altered by our environment. He argued that a society should provide ways to satisfy these needs. Maslow also used evolution to explain his hierarchy and believed higher level needs are later on the evolutionary scale than lower level ones. He also said the higher level needs produce more happiness than lower level ones. The quality of this happiness is deeper and more fulfilling than simply pleasure. The hedonistic drives are only temporary. These are like Freud's id impulses. But his higher level needs, when satisfied, provide important meaning and purpose to life. Maslow also explained that deprivation of any of the needs leads to problems or psychopathology. For example, not reaching self-actualization results in metapathology, which is not having values, a lack of fulfillment, and a loss of meaning in life. Maslow studied self-actualized people to try to understand their personalities. He had some trouble with this quest because this was a personality based on his theory and it was a new idea. Another problem was many people he identified as self-actualized refused to participate in his research. So he began reading biographies of famous people to see if he could find self-actualizing people. During this process, he decided to change his research question from what makes this person self-actualizing to why aren't we all self-actualizing? This led him to the criteria for a self-actualizing person. They were free from pathology. They had progressed through the hierarchy of needs, and they embraced the B values. The B values are truth, goodness, beauty, justice, and simplicity. Maslow emphasized that self-actualizers are meta-motivated by B values, and he said this is what made self-actualizers different from other people. According to Maslow, self-actualizers differ in terms of their basic motivation. Maslow proposed a distinct type of motivation called meta-motivation, sometimes called B motivation. The prefix meta means after or beyond. Meta-motivation then indicates that it goes beyond psychology's traditional idea of motivation. Meta-motivation implies a condition in which motivation as we know it plays no role. Self-actualizers are not motivated to strive for a particular goal. Instead, they are said to be developing from within. Maslow believed that a very small percentage of people reach the ultimate level of psychological health called self-actualization. Some estimates put that at only around 1%. Maslow also held that self-actualizing people are meta-motivated by B values, as we discussed. Maslow compared D love, deficiency love, to B love, love for the being or essence of another person. Self-actualizing people are capable of B love. That is, they have the ability to love without expecting something in return. B love is mutually felt and shared, and not based on deficiencies within the lovers. Because self-actualizers are capable of deeper love, sex between two B lovers is a spiritual experience, but it can also be playful. Maslow listed 15 qualities that characterize self-actualizing people, although not all self-actualizers possess each of these characteristics to the same extent. The characteristics of self-actualizing people are: 1. A more efficient perception of reality. They often have an almost uncanny ability to detect phoniness in others and are not fooled by con artists. 2. Acceptance of self, others, and nature. 3. Spontaneity, simplicity, and naturalness. They have no need to appear complex or sophisticated. 4. Problem-centered. They view age-old problems from a solid philosophical position. 5. The need for privacy, or a detachment that allows them to be alone without being lonely. 6. Autonomy. They have grown beyond dependency on other people for their self-esteem. 7. Continued freshness of appreciation, and the ability to view everyday things with a fresh vision and appreciation. 8. Frequent reports of peak experiences, or those mystical experiences that give a person a sense of transcendence and feelings of awe, wonder, ecstasy, reverence, and humility. For number 9, Maslow used a German term which takes us back to Adlerian psychology, and I'm going to try to pronounce it. I'll probably have to untie my tongue afterwards. Gemeinschaftsgefühl, that is a social interest or a deep feeling of oneness with all humanity. Number 10, profound interpersonal relations, but with no desperate need to have a multitude of friends. 11, the democratic character structure, or the ability to disregard superficial differences between people. 12, discrimination between means and ends, meaning that self-actualizing people have a clear sense of right and wrong, and they are ethical. 13, a basic philosophical sense of humor, or humor that is spontaneous, unplanned, and intrinsic to the situation. 14, creativeness. They possess a keen perception of truth, beauty, and reality. 15, resistance to enculturation. This one's interesting. They have the ability to set personal standards and to resist the mold set by the dominant culture. In other words, they are simply comfortable being who they are. Maslow criticized traditional science as being value-free, with a methodology that is sterile and non-emotional. He argued for a psychology in which psychologists are willing to resacralize their science, that is, to instill it with human values and to view participants with awe, joy, wonder, rapture, and ritual. Even though empirical quantitative measures have been developed to show support for his theoretical approach, he was really a qualitative researcher. Maslow's method for investigating self-actualization was consistent with his philosophy of science. He began his study of self-actualizing people with little evidence that such a classification of people even existed. He looked at healthy people, learned what they had in common, then established a syndrome, if you will, for psychological health. Next, he refined the definition of self-actualization, studied other healthy people, and changed the syndrome. He continued this process until he was satisfied that he had a clear definition of self-actualization. Other researchers have developed personality inventories for measuring self-actualization. The most widely used of these is Everett Sjöström's Personal Orientation Inventory, the POI, a 150 forced choice inventory that assesses a variety of self-actualization facets. It is a self-report questionnaire, a comprehensive measure of the values and behaviors of self-actualizers. When used in counseling as a pre and post-therapy measure, the POI provides a picture of an individual's level of positive mental health. And the POI correlates positively with many other measures of mental health. As we have learned, self-actualization can be elusive. The overwhelming majority of people fail to achieve a life even close to what they are capable of. Discovering why there is an innate pull or tendency towards mediocrity is essential in overcoming it. Abraham Maslow posited the existence of a psychological condition inherent in human beings, which sabotages their dreams of greatness. He called this condition the Jonah complex. The Jonah complex comes from the story in the Old Testament of the Bible. Jonah was told by God to go to the city of Nineveh to tell the people that God was displeased with them and would bring terrible judgment on them unless they changed their ways. Jonah instead decided to go to another place where he thought he could hide from God and his assignment. But while traveling on a ship to this other place, God sent a huge storm, and the men on the ship realized after talking with Jonah that they were in danger because of Jonah. So they threw him overboard, and the storm stopped. Jonah was subsequently swallowed by a fish and spent 3 days in the belly of the fish, which eventually vomited him onto dry land. God then reminded Jonah of his mission, which he then completed, and the people of Nineveh repented, and God spared them. The Jonah complex basically is a fear of doing or being one's best. Everyone has some timidity about seeking perfection or greatness, but people can allow false humility to stifle their creativity, and therefore they prevent themselves from becoming self-actualized. The hierarchy of needs concept has obvious ramifications for psychotherapy. Most people who seek psychotherapy probably do so because they have not adequately satisfied their love and belongingness needs. This suggests that much of therapy should involve a productive human relationship, and that the job of a therapist is to help clients satisfy love and belongingness needs. The aim of therapy is for clients to embrace the B values. Clients must be freed from their dependence on others so that their natural impulse to grow can become active, and psychotherapy must not be value-free. One area of positive psychology where Maslow's ideas have been especially influential is in the role of positive experiences in people's lives. Burton and King found support for their hypothesis that writing about positive experiences would be associated with better physical health. Lyubomirsky found additionally that while simply thinking about past positive experiences did not confer physical health benefits, it did result in participants reporting greater well-being than those who wrote about the positive experiences. This more recent research in positive psychology supports Maslow's prediction that peak experiences often have a lasting impact on people's lives. And I think it also endorses the value of journaling positive experiences. I have often asked clients to list 3 positive things that happen in their lives every day, and also to write about why those things are meaningful to them. Maslow's theory has been popular in psychology and other disciplines such as marketing, management, nursing, and education. This hierarchy of needs concept seems both simple and logical, which gives Maslow's theory the illusion of simplicity. However, the theory is somewhat complex with several dimensions of needs and the possibility of unconsciously motivated behavior. Just consider the other needs that overlay the basic needs hierarchy. As a scientific theory, Maslow's model rates high in generating research but low in falsifiability. Maslow used personal interviews and didn't, I don't think, really give us a clear operational definition of self-actualization. On its ability to organize knowledge and guide action, the theory rates quite high. On its simplicity and internal consistency, it rates only average. Maslow believed that people are structured in such a way that their activated needs are exactly what they want most. Hungry people desire food, frightened people look for safety, and so forth. Although he was generally optimistic and hopeful, Maslow saw that people are capable of great evil and destruction. He believed that as a species, humans are becoming more and more fully human and motivated by higher level needs. In summary, Maslow's view of humanity rates high on free choice, optimism, teleology, uniqueness, conscious over unconscious, and about average on social influences.